maybe talk a little bit about why you thought this would be a good idea to run this event?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Molly Rubaru. I am a flight attendant of 4.5 years, just about. I was class 1620. And first, I was based in Washington, Dulles, and for 2 years, and then San Francisco for 2.5 years. And now I'm back in LA since being furloughed, and kind of was getting a little bit frozen in fear and kind of not knowing where to go with my career. My bachelor's degree was in hotel management, and that's not really hiring very much right now either. So trying to figure out where to focus my attention and how to look up a new career, something that's going to provide a solid paycheck and health insurance that's a little bit more than just a part-time side hustle, to fill in everything that we've lost from being furloughed. So I was on Instagram, and we have a mutual friend in common that was doing an event with you, and I thought that would be a really cool tool to get people moving and proactive and feeling a little bit in control of themselves in all of this uncertainty. And so that's how I reached out to you and thought maybe this would be good for aviation.
Nice. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things. And a lot of what we're going to talk about is a non-traditional approach. But first off, I'd like to get to know where people are coming from. Do you want to type in the chat where you're from, where you live, what airline you work for, what you do? Are you a flight attendant? Are you a gate agent? Let us know in the chat. And at any point during this meeting, if there's any questions that you have or anything like that, feel free to let us know. And we'd love to hear from you and take your questions as well. All right, so Molly, why don't I kick this off and start the actual presentation. So let me just share my screen here. 1 second. Okay. Present. Okay, I'm going to share my screen right now. Can everybody see my screen?
I can see it. Okay,
perfect. So welcome to Job Hacking 101. This is the presentation. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the wrong one. This is the right one here. Very similar looking presentations. So today we're going to be talking about some strategies on how to land a job in the next 30 days. So just to kick things off here, a little bit about me. I've been a career coach since about 2015. I have done workshops at a number of different universities and colleges, as well as one for the United Nations Association in Canada for young entrepreneurs. I've spoken along the LinkedIn learning team, and I've been on a couple of different podcasts and things like that too. And I really like to focus on an alternative approach to looking for jobs. That's not what you're typically going to get. That's not the standard advice of fix your resume, fix your LinkedIn, that kind of stuff. Because I know that that's something that's very, over-advised, and it doesn't tend to get my students very far. So to give you a quick overview of what this workshop is not about, this workshop is not about how to update your resume. We're not going to talk about how to update your LinkedIn. We're not going to talk about things like bypassing applicant tracking systems or applying on job boards, or basically any other kind of overused advice you've heard 1,000 times that hasn't really been helping you very much. What this workshop is, however, is we're going to talk about designing the career that you want from scratch, building relationships with actual real people, and using proven techniques to target specific people at specific companies. So we're going to be essentially learning how to plant seeds and ask for help with a new network that we're creating, and use a number of free tools to help us get ahead in our career and learn how to network better. So just a quick show of hands here from the people that are in the audience. Which are you? Have you recently gotten laid off? Were you furloughed? Are you doing temp or part-time work, or are you underemployed? Are you a newcomer to Canada or the United States and you don't have the North American experience that a lot of companies are looking for? Have you already started looking for jobs and interviews, but haven't landed a job yet? I'd love to hear a little bit about where people are coming from and you know, what your experience has been so far with all this kind of stuff. So let us know. And okay, great. So I see Amy is working for Air Canada. I see that Phoenix, United Airlines, really cool. Toronto, graduating aerospace agent or student. Don't have Canadian experience and not getting interviews, laid off, Air Canada as well. So great, there's lots of Canadians here. I'm Canadian, I'm here in Toronto. And Molly, you said you're out in LA right now, right?
Yes, I'm in LA.
Okay, excellent. So we've got a bit of both of people from all over, and that's great. It looks like we've got, how many people are actually here right now? We've got 30 some odd people here. Great. Got laid off in Ottawa, recently laid off, getting some interviews, but not for jobs that you want to stick with. Okay, perfect. I think you guys are all in the right place. So I want you to stop feeling like this, getting that "we regret to inform you" email, that frustrating, you know, situation that you're in. You're, you know, getting frustrated by the situation. You can't control getting furloughed. You can't control all of these things that are happening. I want to give you some tools to kind of help you really make big strides in where you're going with your career. And I think this will be very useful. At any point in the workshop, please feel free to ask questions, and Molly's going to be keeping an eye out on the chat and fielding some of those and asking those while I'm presenting. So to go over the agenda today a little bit, we've got, we're going to be talking about the problem and, you know, what the general problem of unemployment is and how, you know, how we get stuck. We'll be talking about how to start designing our career. And then I'll go into the 4 key steps that I think are going to make a big difference for you. And that's going to be researching your industry, prospecting specific people, emailing specific people, and then tracking whether or not your emails are being read. So the optional homework at the end of the this workshop is going to be a short little how to land your interview in how to land an interview in 1 week little mini course. And then we'll take some questions. But again, if there's any questions throughout, we're happy to take those as well and chat about them. And please do ask. I don't want to be like talking the whole time. I'd love to have a bit more of a conversation. So if you've got questions throughout, just don't be shy. So here's the major problem I find with job boards. Job boards are essentially a black hole for a lot of people. You'll find that you send out dozens or hundreds of applications a lot of the time and yield very few results. Who is in this situation where you've sent out lots of applications, but you really haven't gotten anything back? That's something that a lot of my students have experienced. The second is competition. There's so much competition when you apply on job boards that each listing will already typically have 200 to 400 applicants before you even apply. So a lot of the time, you're really kind of throwing your resume out there, and there's so much competition that you're not getting many results back. In fact, 75% of resumes are actually rejected by an applicant tracking system before they're even read by a human. So this is why I want you to stop thinking and putting so much effort into your resume when a lot of the time no one's even seeing it. One of the other problems with this approach is that a lot of the time you're not going to get to a decision maker until very far down the road. First, there's the applicant tracking system, then there's the job screen, like the phone screen, then there's an interviewer, then there's a decision maker. But instead, what we're going to focus on is how to go straight for that specific decision maker and go from there. And the last is the hidden job market. So a lot of people have maybe heard of the hidden job market. And the statistic there is that about 70 to 80% of the job market is hidden. And what does that mean? That means a lot of the time jobs aren't necessarily posted online. And there are a number of reasons for that. Sometimes the company isn't ready to post the job yet. Sometimes they haven't finished coming and creating a job and figuring out what's going to go into that role yet. And sometimes they just decide to keep things internal for their own internal employees. So we're going to be learning a little bit about this kind of stuff. Some stats and expectations. So like I said, 75% of resumes are rejected before they even reach a hiring manager. Networking reveals that 60 to 85% of jobs are found through building relationships and meeting other people, not applying online. And that's kind of an astounding statistic, right? And so we're going to learn how to actually go about doing that. Number 3 is that it does come down to being a numbers game at the end of the day. The more that you send out, the more we can return. And, one of the key parts here is that I can help you increase your ratio from, sometimes you're going to get 1 in 50 return that's gonna email you back or ask to have an interview with you. I can increase your ratio to about 1 in 5 or maybe even 1 in 4. But at the end of the day, you're still going to need to send out a lot of reach outs to connection requests to people in order to get anywhere with this method. And the 4th is you need to prepare for a long haul. The average job search in the US takes about 5 months. And with a lot of hard work and using this method, I think we can beat that average by, half, hopefully, or less. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping to give you today. Molly, what's your experience been with job boards and things like that? How have you actually gone about applying for jobs or people that you know? What's your experience with that sort of thing? Whoops, you're on mute. There we go.
Okay, hi. There was your question about job boards?
Yeah, I was going to say, what's your experience been like applying on job boards and things like that? How do you typically go about your job search?
I haven't really started since being furloughed, and but previously, 5 years ago, before I was with United, I guess I would use LinkedIn. Or since I knew I was in hotel management, I would just look at the major hotels' websites, just to look on them directly. And so I would reference like Indeed or Glassdoor, those types, or I'm not even aware of what's even out there anymore in terms of websites, but I would reference those, but I generally would go directly to the website of the company itself.
Okay, great. And maybe you can tell me a little bit about, so as a flight attendant, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the skills that people have that they might not even realize. What are some of the core skills in the aviation industry that you think really come out for people people who are flight attendants that they might not realize that they have?
Yeah, I have some ideas. Obviously, if I don't hit on any, you guys please give us some more ideas in the chat. But the ones I can think of at the top of my head would be definitely crisis management. We're trained for catastrophe. Thank God we don't have to use it every day. But that's what we're primarily trained in, being safety experts and having the training in CPR and delegating. We are trained in how we approach a situation. At United, we call it check, call, care. So you check on the distressed passenger first, then you call for help, and then you administer the care. So all of those little things are also touching on communication, how we communicate with passengers, flight deck, and our crew. And critical thinking, problem solving, everything happens so fast. And then de-escalation with
Right.
past conflict.
So conflict resolution and things like that.
Yeah. And then there's the position in the aircraft when you're the flight manager or purser or leader.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be given to anybody at United domestically and sometimes internationally too. And you will be in charge of the entire thing. So if something goes wrong, your supervisors are going to be asking you.
Right.
And so I'm not sure if that could be possibly considered management experience on a
Totally.
resume.
Yeah, I think so. I think that when you're in charge of a crew or you're the, the lead flight attendant and things like that, I think that's definitely touches into management experience for sure.
And then I just want to give everybody the idea too. I never was, but there are tons of options within administration and in flight to be on special committees and things like that. And so not to forget about those experiences that you may have had over the past couple of years with
Mm-hmm.
the union or with doing specialty. Gosh, what did we call it at United when you worked at the base? And you were not an active flight attendant, but you were still going into work every day as administrative side. So there's those
Right.
types of positions that people can all be in all the time as well.
Okay, that sounds great. So let's press on here. So this is where I want everybody to just take out a pen and some paper, and I want you to write down, including this last role that you've had, write down 2 to 3 large, your last 2 to 3 roles, or if you're, a new graduate or something like that, it could be projects that you had or, student council or things like that. But basically 3 key things that you've done in the last couple of years. And write down what are some of the major responsibilities you've had in each of those. And I'll give you a minute to do this. So think about this as, okay, uh, even if you didn't have a specific job, it could be a project that you took on, it could be volunteer experience, it could be something you did on student council, or it could be, some of the actual responsibilities that you had as a flight attendant or a gate agent or whatever it may be. And write down some of those major responsibilities here and accomplishments if you have specific measurable accomplishments that you recall. Okay, so the next part of this, and you can keep working on this, and I'll also email out these slides as well so you can take a look. The next part of this is for each of those roles, try to think about what your highlights in that role were. So what were your favorite parts of the job in each of those roles? And write those down right next to them as well. Or if you've already written those down, you can just circle the ones that you found were, the best parts of each of those jobs. For me, for instance, I used to run events all the time, and I really like working with people and working with teams. I like presenting. So those are some of the things that I would highlight. So in an event management role, I ran lots of events. I had to deal with all of the marketing for those events, putting up the Eventbrite and promoting on social media and stuff like that. And that stuff I don't really like that much, but I do really like getting in front of people, having conversations, and helping people in this kind of way. So those are my highlights. Would anybody like to share some of their highlights just in the chat? You don't have to actually come on video or anything like that, but what are some of people's favorite highlights in their last couple of roles? Just throw them into the chat here. Molly, what were some of yours in your last role? What were some of the highlights as a flight attendant? You're on mute again.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was just writing that one of my favorite parts is, in general, when I get to solve a passenger's problem or issue that they have with them. That feels really satisfying when the outcome is positive and you are the reason for it. So
Great.
that's always, problem solving is fun. It's not so fun when you can't help them and they get mad.
Yeah, totally.
But usually that's because the demand is so outrageous. We can most always help the situation when it's a pretty realistic thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you haven't paid for first class, we can't just put you there.
Right. I see a couple people in the chat too. Kristen says, not working 9 to 5 is great. Traveling, coaching new hires, working in business class, that must be really nice. Providing great service to frequent and high tier flyers, that's really cool. And then a different Kristen says, constant challenges, need to problem solve, experience in operations support, being a brand ambassador, really cool. And then Mashiat says volunteer experience interacting with people from all walks of life, grant proposal projects from school. That's really cool. Researching and innovating, brainstorming new ideas. So there's a little bit of creativeness there and things like that. So that's great, right? Trying to actually pick out the things that we like the most helps us try to start figuring out what are the parts of our jobs that we like. And I want you to actually sit down this evening after this call and try to make a few columns here. One is list out your actual different roles and the things that you did in them. 2, the highlights from each of those roles. 3, I want you to point out what are the things that you absolutely didn't like about them. I'm sure there's parts of your job that you hated. So what are some things that you absolutely don't want to do? You know, for me, those are things like, you know, I hate doing administrative work and things like that. I hate social media management. But if it comes down to like managing a team or helping mentor people or things like that, those are things that kind of really highlight for me. And then the last column is try to think about what you want to learn in your next role. So that can be a skill, that can be a technology, that can be, you know, whatever it may be. What are some things that you actually want to learn? Think of your career as an opportunity to learn new skills while you're getting paid to do them. For instance, let's say you're really fascinated by astronomy. And you know, you have no experience in that, but you know, you love reading books about it and you love reading articles about it and things like that. If you manage to, you know, find a job as, I don't know, like a marketing person for a company that publishes an astronomy magazine, you're probably going to be able to grow a lot in that industry and learn a lot about that industry and a lot about the things that you're really interested in. So try to find the intersectionalities there of, you know, what you love and what you want to learn. Okay, so let's move on here. We're going to dive into a lot of the kind of nitty-gritty stuff that I think is going to really help you. So the method that I like to teach in my my 5-week coaching program is starting off with motivation and how to stay motivated. Support and accountability is so crucial. But today we're going to be talking about design, networking, applications, and follow-ups. Okay, so first off, getting started. Here are the 4 different parts of the method that we're going to talk about today is research, finding the kinds of companies and roles that you might be interested in. This is really crucial for a lot of people here that don't really know what their next step is. So how are we going to find that out? We're going to do that a lot by doing some research, and I'll show you in a second how to do that. Number 2 is prospecting. And that means essentially finding specific people in decision-making roles at specific companies. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that as well. Then is reaching out. I really like to reach out by email, and I'll show you how to do that. Some people choose to reach out on LinkedIn, which can work really well as well. So try a combination of both of those methods, and we'll get into how to do that. And then last is tracking to see if your emails are being read and what isn't being read. And this is really, really crucial. So the reason this is really important is because a lot of people are kind of constantly in this black hole of not knowing where they are in their job hunt process. They don't know if they're making any progress. They don't know if anybody's reading their stuff, or if it's just kind of going into this black hole. So that's really frustrating and demoralizing. So I'm going to show you some tools on how to actually kind of reclaim that and be able to use some tools to track that data and make decisions based on what you see. So first, research. I want you to search online for some of the things that you wrote down in your career design 4 columns, right? And some of the things that you like doing. So search Google for some of the types of roles or companies that you're interested in, and use this as kind of a broad brainstorm search. Number 2 is talk to everybody you know. This is so crucial because right now, if you think about it, you're the only person who's looking for a job for you. But when you start talking to people and coming up with kind of an increasingly concise idea of what you want to do, or even just having that conversation with more and more people, you start to get a better idea for yourself, but at the same time, you're telling other people what you're looking for. So immediately you're starting to outsource some of that work to other people, to your uncle, to your neighbor, to your friends, and saying, I'm looking for a role in customer success at a company that, has social impact. And when you tell that to a couple of people, they start to be able to put their ear to the ground and keep an eye out for opportunities that might exist in that area for you. So that's really great. The more you do that, think of yourself as kind of a tree, and the more you kind of talk to people, every person is a different branch on that tree, and you kind of start to grow all these feelers of people that can help you. And then last is use job boards for inspiration. I really don't like encouraging people to use job boards because they are very ineffective, and they can get you into this vicious cycle of getting discouraged. But just like your high school teacher might have told you back in high school, don't reference Wikipedia on your essays and things like that. Think of job boards as like Wikipedia. So go and check them out, and learn a little bit about the types of positions and roles that sound interesting, just to kind of brainstorm. Write those things down. Write down the types of companies that you find interesting just by browsing around, and use that as a guide. Okay, so that's how I go about doing research. Do we have any questions up until this point? Okay. I'll just keep pressing on, and feel free to ask any questions. Does any of this not sound clear? Let me know at any point. I'm here for you. Okay, so step 2 is prospecting. So this is going to be really interesting for you, and I hope you're gonna like how to do this. So I really like to prospect on LinkedIn. First, you go on LinkedIn and you can search the name of a company. And then you can actually go, and there's going to be a button at the bottom right that's going to say see X number of employees on LinkedIn. When you click on that, you're going to be able to start applying filters to filter down the types of people that you might want to talk to. And here, I want to encourage you to look for people that are not the recruiters for the roles that you might be interested in, but rather, who do you predict will be the manager for the job that you're interested in? And that can be tricky to find, but take your best guess. It doesn't have to be completely accurate. It doesn't have to be the perfect person, but take your best guess and go from there. So you can actually filter down by the location, by the current company they work at, and then you can put in a keyword for, marketing or customer service or whatever it is that you might be interested in. Okay, and then you can actually go, and once you figure out some of those keywords and things like that, you can go down and see, okay, I see there's a marketing manager here. That means if I started a marketing role, that there's a good chance that this person is going to be my boss at this company. Take that with a grain of salt for a huge company like Microsoft, because there's going to be obviously like thousands of marketing managers. But for a company that's kind of in the 50 to 200 range, that's kind of a good strategy to get started with. And this is a really, really fun part. So there is a website called hunter.io, hunter.io. And you can actually go and type in the domain name of a company right here. And as soon as you hit enter, it's going to spit out the emails of a whole bunch of people that work here. You might have to sign up for free. It's free to sign up to like 100 leads or something like that, or 100 searches. But yeah, stick in the name of the company, and here it'll show you the most common pattern of email. So here it says last name, first initial at Microsoft.com is the most common email pattern. I can look up a specific person's name, and if it actually shows up with a little green crest like this, that means that it's a verified email. And that means that if you send that person an email, that is for sure their email address. That being said, if it's a little green dot instead, it means that Hunter is taking its best guess at what this person's email probably is, but it's not 100% sure. Okay, so next, we're going to learn how to email someone directly. That can sound a little intimidating for a lot of people, but I want you to bear with me, and I have a template that I'm going to share with you that is the structure for how I want you to kind of go about these types of reach outs. So there are 3 steps to how I like to reach out to people. First is form some kind of connection. Show them some kind of flattery that shows that you, and make this genuine, right? Try to find something that you have in common with this person by reading their LinkedIn, or you can Google their name and see if they have a blog, or see if they have a Twitter or an Instagram or whatever, and see if there are things that you find in common with this person. And just be upfront with that. You can talk about, if nothing else, you can talk about their experience that they've had in the field, how they got to where they are, and you can come up to them and, from a genuine perspective, ask, tell them that you really admire how they transitioned from a lower role to where they are today, and you'd love to make that kind of transition in your career. Would they be open to helping you figure that out? Second is quantify your accomplishments. As much as possible, try to quantify everything in your career experience, and I'll show you a little bit about what I mean in a minute. And I really like to list 3 specific quantifiable accomplishments in your career and list those in your email. And then number 3 is try to ask for help and create some kind of call to action. Ideally, I love asking people to jump on a 20-minute call. It's not too much, and if you give people a specific date and time, in all the people that I've worked with, there's typically about a 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 chance that they will respond and book a call with you. So that will be significantly different than what you're doing with job boards. You're going to get through to real people. You're going to be asking for help, and a lot of the time they're going to want to help you because you're not going and necessarily directly asking for a job, which can put people on the defensive. When you ask for a job, then they might not be able to give you a job. They might not have the resources. They might not want to put their reputation on the line for that. So instead, ask for help. Ask for help genuinely on how can I get to where you are in your career? I love what you've done. I love how you transitioned from, a flight attendant to working in, the executive, whatever. How do I get to that point in my career? So here's going to be a template that I'm going to show you. This is a template that I wrote for a fake job. So I say, "Hi, Quincy. I hope you're having a nice start to your week. My name is Izzy, and I've been following Free Code Camp's blog and Twitter for the past few years. I'm actually also an alum of the program, and it's been such a life-changing experience for me to be able to teach myself how to code at my own pace. I noticed that there's currently an opening for a community event coordinator, and I'd love to learn more about it. A little bit about me. Last year, I organized a free developer conference for 300 attendees with a budget of under $1,000. As a community manager at Lighthouse Labs, I implemented a strategy that increased the conversion rate from applicants to enrolled students by 34%. And from 2016 to 2018, I led a multi-city team to organize over 50 tech events across Canada with an average of 400 to 600 attendees per month. I'd love the opportunity to hop on a short call and chat a little bit about what I think I can bring to the team at Free Code Camp. I've got some ideas around events we could organize that could really help engage the Free Code Camp community through a series of themed monthly hackathons. Would you be available for a 20-minute short chat on Thursday at 2 p.m.? So it's really important that you actually put in a specific date and a specific time, even if even if they might not be able to do that time. It's a lot easier to say yes or no and then suggest an alternate time for them than it is for them to kind of figure that out from scratch. So that was a lot. Kristen talked a little bit about quantifiable accomplishments from aviation. We can't really track if we've impacted customer retention. Molly, do you have any comments on that? How would you quantify some of your experience?
I guess in terms of customer satisfaction, sometimes that can be hard to track because people don't always let you know what they just want to get off the plane and they're there. So maybe we know how many passengers are held on each aircraft. You could possibly get that number and say, on average per month, delivered or completed successful transportation of, up to 200 passengers per day to their destination.
Yeah.
So those are just buzzwords and numbers, I guess, that is in your experience reading a resume with things like that, do people actually digest that and pay attention to that?
Yes, absolutely. So it's a lot easier to understand things like that because they're numbers, as opposed to just saying I was a flight attendant for 4 years and that's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage you to think about, so I actually had this exercise with one of my friends who worked for Air Canada, and what we did with her is we talked about, okay, so over the course of your career, if you could estimate how many flights have you been on? And if you don't know, well, try to take your best guess by saying, okay, how many flights do you do per month? And then go and kind of roughly estimate how many you've done per month, and then calculate backwards of how many years you've worked there. So how many months? And then, okay, so that means I've worked like 500 flights, let's say.
Right.
And there's a very tangible number right there.
Mm-hmm.
So second, you can talk about some other things, how many passengers were on each flight. You can say, on average of those 500 flights, there were 250 passengers. You served, a quarter of them or whatever. So just do a little bit of estimation math. No one's going to go and check, and no one's going to go and, call you out on things if it's not exactly right. But you want to try to come up with some estimates to better illustrate what it is you do and what types of experience you have. And numbers make it really easy for people to digest that.
Oh, and Kristen also, a different Kristen said that she, as a purser, would add how many crew she supervised. So that's a
Yeah.
good number. 'Cause you're the manager of that amount of people. So that's very easy to understand from an interviewer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great suggestion. What's a purser? What's a purser's role?
It's the same name as a flight leader or
Okay.
the in-flight manager.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really great experience.
And then I'm trying to think about first class as well. I always loved working galley, and galley is the kitchen position serving first class. And then there's the aft galley that serves all of economy.
Mhm.
And I always kind of picture it as the orchestrator because that's how the flow of service is going to go. And all the other flight attendants are waiting on you to have everything in position and ready to go to serve the passengers. So
Right.
if you can get an idea in numbers how many times you've worked galley, and then briefly describe what that galley position means. You get paid more at United to be the galley on
Mhm.
international flights because you really are put in under a lot of pressure to get. If you're in economy on an international flight, you've got gosh, 100, like 200 or more passengers that you're serving. And then if you're a first class galley, you've got, depending on the aircraft, 20 to 40 passengers that you're serving, like a 3-4 course meal. So the galley's a really important position right next to the purser as well.
Totally. Some other things that you could list are how many different destinations that you've traveled to or worked at, how many different legs. You could talk about how many times you were the purser over the last however many years of your career. These are all, quantifiable things that if you do a little bit of math and calculation, you can kind of get some really hard facts to show people that work really well.
Yeah, I like that too when you can say, over the past 5 years, I've worked to over 20 different countries in 500 flights.
Exactly.
That sounds very impressive.
Totally. Exactly right. Okay, let's press on. So, whoops. I recognize that people are probably like freaking out because I'm going to email someone who's a total stranger with these things, and why would they want to talk to me? It sounds terrifying, but please trust me on this. Follow that template and send out an email to someone that you find interesting and follow the steps there and just try it once and you'll see that it's really not as intimidating as it sounds, and a lot of the time you'll come up with really positive experiences from it. So just try it once. That's my homework for you this week. Try to find one person and send one email like this and let me know. Let me know on Instagram, let me know on Twitter. There's my handle down there, Izzy Does Izzy. I want you to take a screenshot of the reply or let me know or whatever. I want to hear about it because I love hearing about these stories. Okay, so pressing on, we're going to go to step 4, which is track. And this one is going to blow your mind, I promise. This is really, really mind-blowing for a lot of people who've never done it. So you can actually track whether your emails are being read. And this isn't read receipts. This isn't like they have to actually know about it kind of thing. This is you actually just using a free tool. And there'll be Armando, maybe you can type in mixmax.com, M-A-X.com. And that's a tool that's free. That's basically a Gmail extension. And from there, you can actually go and, like we see here, you can send an email and you can hover next to it in the sent and see when it was read, how many times it was read, and that sort of thing. So it gives you a lot more data from, okay, if I send out 10 different emails to 10 different people, I know that maybe 5 of them have opened it, 2 of them have read it 10 times, 3 of them have opened it maybe once or twice, and then 5 of them haven't opened it at all. So from there, I can start making decisions as to, which ones are more worthy of following up with. Who actually replied to them? Obviously, go and continue that conversation. If they opened your email like 5 or 6 times but didn't reply, maybe wait a week and see if you can reply again. Maybe they just got busy or whatever it may be. And if they never opened it at all, well, maybe they don't work there anymore. Maybe they didn't see your email at all. You can try to find someone else to contact, or just try again with a different email. There's a question: is there a concern that these messages would be filtered into their junk? There's a possibility, but if you're usually emailing it to a specific person through their specific email address and addressing them, then it's usually not filtered to junk. But obviously there's a chance of that, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. In my experience, about 1 in 4, 1 in 5 of these will grant you some kind of success, whether that's them replying, hopping on a phone call with you, whatever it may be. Okay, so just try it out. Okay, so that was a lot of information to digest. One thing that I want everybody here to realize is the importance of the time constraints that you're putting into your job search. So if your target salary is $50,000 a year, that means that you're losing $972 of potential income for every week that you're unemployed. So that's a lot, right? I think it's really important for people to really recognize, and I don't want it to stress you out or bum you out too much, but you have to also keep in mind the reality of the situation, to just have all the facts and recognize, okay, we need to be smart about this. We need to make decisions that are going to be impactful. We need to actually follow strategies and maybe kind of test the things that we're doing. And if it doesn't work, then try a different strategy. So be mindful of all of that. There's going to be a resource at the end of this that's going to walk through step by step all the different things we talked about, and it's totally free. It's a little mini course that I've got, and I'll show you in a second, but I highly encourage you go and check it out, and we can go from there. So this is the link, bit.ly.com/ccmini. Maybe we can get that typed into the chat for everyone to see as well. You can also screenshot it. This webinar is also recorded. I'm also going to email you this link at the end. So don't worry, you're going to get this one way or another. But I highly recommend, this takes about an hour to do, and it's going to walk you through some really kind of important steps to going through all this stuff and totally shifting your mindset into doing things a different way. Okay, so I hope that this was really useful for you. I really want your career to kind of take a whole different path now that you've learned some of these tools. Why don't we take some questions? So that was a lot of information to digest. What questions do people have here? Molly, is there anything that comes to mind for you as well?
I guess I get a little bit scared about the beginning phase in the LinkedIn, filtering through and finding the people that I think I should be cold emailing.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a little bit more words of encouragement for the LinkedIn portion.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't use LinkedIn or have maybe never even used LinkedIn. Try not to worry too much about making your profile look good and sound good, but more use LinkedIn as like a research tool. If you get inspired, obviously you can look up some strategies on making your LinkedIn look better and things like that. There is a little advantage to that, because when you check somebody out on LinkedIn, they can see that you've checked them out, and then they'll often check you back out and see some of your experience, and they might even reach out to you. So that's one thing that you should keep in mind. But at the end of the day, just do some research, get a pen and paper. Like, I really want you to make this as basic as possible. I really like working with pen and paper, because then you don't have the distractions of everything that you might be getting worried about. So start with pen and paper, just brainstorm by writing down types of people that you might be interested in, whether they're customer success managers, sales managers, whatever they might be, and try to kind of get an idea of those kinds of things. When we go back to the research portion of it, when we're asking people for different kinds of things, I think you're going to start to discover a lot more potential careers that you didn't even know existed, potential types of roles that you didn't even know existed. And that's going to help you with that LinkedIn process.
Okay. Yeah, I don't use LinkedIn very much, so it's good to know that when you look at someone, they can see you too.
Yeah,
you're not
for sure.
incognito.
Yeah, for sure.
We got a couple more questions in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Mashiat says, when asking for setting up a call, what do you think would be good conversation topics? I'm not very social, so this part freaks me out.
Yeah, for sure. Talk a little bit about them. The biggest thing to do here is talk about their experience, try to find some of their accomplishments, and just be genuine about what you think that they've done that's cool. So you can talk about, I saw that you started a blog about, about your career. It was really interesting reading about this and this and this. Or I found your YouTube channel and saw that you talked about this. Or it can just be from their actual experience, from their LinkedIn. You can talk about specific things that they've accomplished. It is intimidating. I understand not everybody, this doesn't come to everybody like that. If you're worried about it, just feel free to shoot me an Instagram message or shoot me a tweet and I'll take a glance at it anytime. I'm happy to go over some of that stuff with you and take a peek.
I would just like to add that I think most people always love a little bit of flattery and to talk about themselves. So that's exactly what you said. Refer it back to them. Like, oh, I admire so much your job and how you've gotten to that position, and could you lend some insight? And then they'll just start talking, usually. Yeah. And then we've got another chat that says, I've been flying since 2011. I did have a few really good government jobs when I was in school, but I'm not sure how much focus I should bring to those jobs since they were in 2009 and 10. Will employers disregard this experience because it was so long ago?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I think it's important to kind of weave that into the story of your experience. If you've been flying since 2011, obviously the brunt of your experience is the 9 years of experience you've had in the aviation industry. But if you're looking to get back into that kind of role, you can definitely talk about your experience in those types of roles. It's just you've been doing something else for 9 years. So I think it really just depends on what type of thing you're looking for. And it's important to kind of curate your experience to what you're looking for. So, for instance, if you were looking to apply for a job as an events coordinator, you probably wouldn't be talking too much about your experience in, I don't know, software development, because it's totally irrelevant. So try to cater the experience to the job that you're looking for.
And then someone else had a question, if you could go over again really quick, how to track if the email you sent is opened or read by hiring manager.
Yeah, so at the end of this course, you already have that link. If you scroll up a little bit, bit.ly/ccmini, that is going to specifically go through all of that with you. It's totally free to do, so just sign up and you'll get access to that whole little mini curriculum. Like I said, it takes about an hour to do. So that will for sure answer all of those questions. And again, if you have any questions or it's not clear for any reason, just send me a message on Twitter, Instagram. You can email me too at izzy@joinclearcareer.com. So
that bit.ly link that you sent, is that almost like joining a little tech guidance workshop on how to read the email and download the tool?
Yeah,
okay.
It's basically just like a little online course platform, and it's going to have different modules, and you're going to be able to go in and see, lesson 1, lesson 2, and they're not videos or anything. It's just like a little kind of different little documents that show you how to read through and do all those things. Very, very clearly outlined and labeled. It should be very straightforward to read through, and a lot of people have gotten a lot out of it. So highly recommend you check that out.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Do you have any other questions?
No, that's really, I think I've gotten all mine answered. Last one from Kristen. If we are applying for jobs online, is it better to apply directly to the company or through a LinkedIn posting?
I would say it's better to apply directly to the company, but even better than that is, do that, but at the same time, go and do what I just told you to do, which is go and find a direct, a decision maker at that company and email them and tell them that you've also applied for this job and talk a little bit about your experience there in the same way that I showed you with that template. There you're kind of using a two-pronged approach that will help you kind of get more eyes on you and get your thing to the top of the pile because you're actually getting through to a real person.
And then Andrea just asked, is it okay to sell yourself to an employer who may not be hiring at the moment for a job or role that you'd be great for, but it may not exist at the company yet?
Question of the day. Andrea, I wish that I could give you some sort of prize. That is my favorite thing, because if you're applying to a company, it's often even better if there's no role existing, because then you're actually putting the idea in their head. There might be something that is coming up or may exist. Twice in my career, I've had jobs created specifically for me because I reached out. I'll give you a story quickly. So I used to work at a coding boot camp called Lighthouse Labs. And before I started working there, I found out about this place and I thought it was cool. So I went and did some of the research, just like I showed you. And I found out that there were about 30 people in the company. So, okay, 30 people, that's not so big. I'm just going to email the CEO directly. CEO is just a person, right? They're not some kind of god or anything like that. They're just a person who started a company, and that's really cool. So I emailed him directly and said, rumor has it you guys are looking for, a role as a manager of the co-working space that you work in. I'd love to learn a bit more about it. Here are some things that I've done, and I list some of my experience and said, would you be open for a quick coffee tomorrow? I'd love to chat a little bit and learn about and tell you about what I can bring to the table. He emails me back. He says, yeah, sure. So we're actually down to the last two candidates for this role, but I like your experience and I think it would be useful to have a chat. So I went in the next morning, we did a tour of the co-working space. He introduced me to a few people. We had a great conversation. And at the end of it, we kind of agreed that this isn't really what I was looking for. So he ended up giving that role to one of the two candidates. And we kept talking. Then he called me a couple of days later and said, hey, listen, would you be open to working kind of part-time for now? We really like your experience. We'd like to work with you. I came back to him and I said, well, part-time doesn't really work for me because I am looking for a full-time job. And if I work part-time, it means I'm going to have to get another job. So it's not really going to work. But I do really like this company. So he said, okay, let me get back to you. He went and had some conversations with other people, brought me in for another interview with two other people. And then at the end of that, basically said, okay, so we really like you. We've juggled things around a little bit. And although we can't give you the exact salary that you want, we can give you one that's a little bit lower, but give you a full-time position. And he ended up creating a whole new position specifically for me based on my experience and what I told him I wanted to do. And that position didn't exist. So exactly right, Andrea, is I want you to think about roles that don't exist, come up with what you want to do and pitch to companies and pitch it to specific people. And you might find yourself very, fortunate with the types of opportunities that you find arising from that. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So why don't we wrap it up from here? What I will say is for anyone who is interested in career coaching, you can maybe stick around. We'll shut off the YouTube stream and we can chat a little bit. I can tell you a little bit about the program that I offer. But before we go, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Molly, for coming and coming up to us with this idea and hosting this event. It was really awesome. And I hope this was useful for everybody. And I hope this was useful for you.
Thank you so much. I am so glad we got to make this happen, and it all feels like a very digestible tips and tricks. So very, very pleased. Thank you so much.
Awesome. My pleasure. So we'll say bye. And we can turn off the stream. If you want to hang around for a couple minutes, we can talk a little bit about the 5-week career coaching program that I have. But other than that, thank you, everybody. And I will send an email with all of the resources and everything after that.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good night.